Dearly departed, we are gathered here today to look at the information that I have gleaned in my search for my grandfather, Clarence Wellesley Booth's family history. When I was born, I didn't know much about him. I do remember him being a kind gentleman, a tall man, one that was peaceful and even-spirited. But the most that I was able to glean about him during that time is that his father was not there. His mother left and went to Panama. He grew up in Jamaica, and that he was a shoemaker. So as I grew, I began to become inquisitive and to seek out more information to put together my family history. What you're looking at now is a marriage certificate of registry for my grandfather's grandparents. On the 1st of April 1833, John Samuel Booth, a 30-year-old carpenter, marries Frances McIntosh, a 21-year-old spinster. Now, when I first heard that word spinster, I thought it was disrespectful. But yes, they called everyone a spinster who was not married at that time. They married in St. John's Church in Westmoreland, Jamaica, before her parents, John and Mary Ann McIntosh. So in 1883, my grandfather's grandparents were getting married. But then I came across this interesting information that in 1882, just some months prior, Rosa Matilda was born to said Frances Matilda McIntosh. So at this time, Frances McIntosh was not married and she had a child. Something to note is that the father column was left empty. So it leaves one to wonder whether or not it was James or John Samuel who was the father, and then they became married and they started to move forward with their life. So essentially, Rosa Matilda was born in the 26th of August, 1882 to Frances McIntosh in Bellevue, Westmoreland. Shortly after John and Frances married, they stayed together and had 9 children. Rosa Matilda, we're just going to count her into the bunch: Louisa, Georgiana, Matilda, Hubert, Octavius, Eleanor, Rebecca, Fanny, Jane Samuel, and Herbert Samuel. One thing that I found is that they, among with others, were a fan of using the same name. So that made the search even more interesting. After that, we have Hubert, which would be my grandfather's uncle. And Hubert is one of the oldest of the children, and this is his birth certificate. Now, Hubert was born on the 10th of September, 1887 in Highgate, Westmoreland. So they were wed in 1883. So 4 years after they got married, Hubert was born. At the time of birth, his father, John, was still a carpenter, and Francis's father, James McIntosh, is listed as a witness. So if we go back to the birth certificate and we see, I'm jumping ahead. If we go back to the birth certificate of Hubert, we can see James McIntosh listed at the bottom. So essentially, after the baby was born, people would go to the registrar's office and they would want a witness, like who was there, during the birth of the child. And so in that case, it was his grandfather. As we go forward in this conversation, we jump to the year of 1910. What I did know of my grandfather's mother was her name was Rebecca. They did give us that much. Thank you. Her name was Rebecca Booth, and what we also knew is that Rebecca Booth went to Panama. But before she went to Panama, she had a child, and this child's name was Clarence Wellesley. And like her mother before her, there was no name in the father slot on the birth certificate. And that would indicate, much like it does today, not that there wasn't a father, it's that he wasn't present at the birth of the child, right? And so who was present was her older brother, Hubert. And Hubert is whose name is written here, Booth, Hubert Booth, is as a witness. What I found noteworthy is that it wasn't her parents whose name was on here, which we know they were around during this time. It wasn't The father of the child, it was her brother, and her brother is going to be a reoccurring character that we should look forward to. So essentially in 1909, Rebecca became pregnant, and in May of 1910, she gave birth to Clarence. Now we know she's younger than Clarence, and Clarence would have been about 22. So we know that she's in her late teens, early 20s during the time that she gives birth to my grandfather, whose name is Clarence for Leslie. But that's not all. It gets popping after this point. The baby is born, and the father, we don't know where he is at the present time. And the mother, which was Rebecca Booth, she is taking a voyage. Stay tuned to find out where she goes and what happens as we learn more about my dearly departed. So, oops, that's it. Now I know how to play it directly from here.